What happens when two parent coaches,
one a Christian
and the other an agnostic Jew,
sit down to talk about parenting?
They take their listeners from surviving to thriving.
I'm Deana Thayer.
And I'm Kira Dorian.
Welcome to Raising Adults,
a podcast brought to you by Future Focused Parenting.
Hi, everyone. It is really something today. Kira and Deana here. I am not in the laundry room. I can speak for myself. We are not together right now, and that's actually what we're going to talk about today. So if you are new to tuning into the Raising Adults podcast, we want to welcome you. But second, we want to let you know this is an anomaly, and this is not normally how this goes. But we are in a really unique situation right now. So Kira and I are recording remotely. We are not in the same room, but we found that it was really important to both of us to keep bringing all of you FFPs content during the wild thing that is existing. So Kira, tell us a little bit, give our listeners a sense of exactly what is going on.
Well, I am in my laundry room. As per usual. It's not quite as warm and toasty in here because you're not snuggled next to me.
Right.
Very lonely. Downstairs, my husband is working from home. My children are online schooling. Our district, if you watch the news, you may recall there was a school district in Washington that decided to shut down. That was mine. And so I have to give them some credit. They threw this together pretty quickly and pretty impressively, and all the other districts are really not as prepared as our district was. But it is bananas to suddenly go online with two 8-year-olds. Luckily, they read. I have friends who have a second grader and a kindergartner, and they're literally bouncing between computers, okay, what do you have to do now? What does your assignment say? Oh, Matt, M-A-T, push that button. I mean, it is wild. So my children are downstairs. My husband is working from home. And my father, who lives with us, is quite literally shut up in his mother-in-law unit downstairs, not leaving his apartment at all, because he's in the most vulnerable group of people. And of course, children are little germy things. So he FaceTimes with them every day from downstairs. I mean, bananas does not even begin to describe what's happening at my house right now.
Yeah, that word is not sufficient, but we're going to go with it because it really beats some of the other things we may be tempted to say right now.
Yeah, there's been a lot of swearing on the outside. I am not going to lie. Not at my children, mind you, but
the situation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of that. I've been trying to tell them, they can just see how frustrated I am. And, because it's a massive learning curve for us as well.
Sure.
And, not everyone has flexible work. I'm really lucky that you and I can kind of crowbar in our work around our lives if we have to. It's not ideal, but we can. But not everyone does. And so it is full-time homeschooling. I mean, the teachers give the assignments, but then you have to make sure they're implementing them. And this is how you submit it. And they're on all these different platforms. So it's science is on this platform over here, and typing is over here, and math is over there. And it's so much. So I just my whole community is underwater right now emotionally. I mean, the Facebook feed is something to behold.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's really, I don't know. I think I get to this point where we almost don't know whether to laugh or cry, but I have to give Kira some compliments here, listeners, because the last couple days that we have spoken by phone to just strategize all of this. I mean, we're also learning a new platform to be able to podcast remotely and all of this. And she has been so gracious to start the call right out of the gate. Just so you know, I'm grumpy.
Yeah.
And if I say something that sounds snarky, it's not directed at you. And so I've just really appreciated that. To be fair, it's almost hard for me to imagine Kira sounding grumpy, as it probably is to most of you listeners. But I just have appreciated the heads up and the disclaimer, but it mostly has not been necessary. But I just love that she's in advance, just know.
Yeah.
I'm cranky.
I am on my last, whatever that is, like my last nerve, my last thread, like all my lasts. I'm on all the lasts of everything. Yeah, because it's bananas. It's I've never. It's fascinating because I have lived through some pretty major things in my life. Like I was in New York City on 9/11. I was in London for the 7/7 bombings. Like I've been through some pretty big crisis catastrophe situations. And they're all really different in their own way. And the common thread between all of them, I will say, which is really heartening, is community. In all of these situations, I have just watched community come together and really rise up to take care of each other. And that's been really great. And this is the same. But I have never experienced anything quite like this before. It is wild.
I think that's fair. And I think that's why we wanted to talk about it today, because you as FFPs are going to eventually find yourself in some kind of survival mode, which we did a whole episode on a while back. And it is important to talk through, like, when life looks totally upside down, what do you do? How do you still salvage maybe some threads of normalcy and some pieces of the future focused elements and the parenting on the same page elements, and how do you do that? So we wanted to make sure to talk about it because we're literally in the midst of it right now.
Well, and your Mark's school just closed, right? So you're about to enjoy the joys of my life.
I'm about to enjoy it. And what was interesting is we just found out yesterday, and so our school will be closing for the rest of this week and all of next week. And we were already off on Monday for a teacher in service. So essentially, all told, it will mean 2 weeks. So what's fascinating is our school is, and I don't even say this negatively, it's just the facts of being a really tiny private school. We're just not at the level to just launch online schooling.
Right.
So the tech isn't necessarily there. I think there'll be some online supplementation, but it's not this school-wide situation. What that means is there is it's a twofold impact, and it's really challenging in its own way. And that is, first of all, a huge onus on the teachers. They're actually at school today and tomorrow prepping all the materials for the students.
Wow.
And so our school at home, which is what they're calling it, will start on Thursday, and we're coming to you on a Tuesday right now. And so that's a huge thing for the teachers to do prep work for a week and 2 days worth of work to not only, I mean, granted, they've got lesson plans and whatever, but now they're having to disseminate things that they may have just talked about in class, and now it has to go to the student. And plus, for these secondary students, which my son is one of them, they have 6 teachers. So it isn't just one teacher preparing all the subjects. It's each teacher trying to coordinate with each other. We actually got a PDF document today saying, here is the time allotment you should expect for each subject, and here are the different due date assignments. And because we don't have this necessarily online capability, some things can be turned in via email, but not all. So here's where it's also challenging for the families, is that we have to go, pick up our materials. And they are going to have the school open for 2 hours on Wednesday and 8 hours on Thursday to go get everything. And then for the secondary school, those 7th through 12th graders, they have due date windows, and there's going to be a table set up for each teacher at the school. And everything from, I think, Thursday, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday, we have to go to the school and turn in on Wednesday and put it on the table for each teacher. And then everything for next Wednesday and Thursday, we have to go to the school, turn it in on Friday. And then everything for Friday, they're hoping we'll get to turn in on the 23rd, when we hope we'll be back to school. But I'm not holding my breath. So
I was just going to say, like, can we just be honest? Like, we're not going back to school anytime soon. Right?
I've just never seen the likes of it. And I will out our family that we had to do school at home during Snowmageddon last year. We had this weird thing in Washington State where the snow actually didn't fall and then melt in 3 hours. Like, it hung around for a long time. And he really disliked it. And he's okay with me sharing that. We talked about it today, but he's not a fan. He's like, this is so much worse than homework because it's not just a couple hours, it's like 7 hours.
Oh, totally. It's so intense if they're not used to being in front of a screen all day, which, especially for parents like you and I that are like, we like to limit screen time.
Yes.
I mean, my little the little tiny eyes that are like pouring into the screen all
That's
day
a really
long.
good
It drives me
point.
crazy.
Oh,
I
maybe
I
I
have
should be glad for not all online then. That's a great point.
I have so many friends that are like, bring back the snow. I miss Snowmageddon. I would take Snowmageddon over this any day. Because the thing is, it's true. Like, I'm going to be honest. I don't think we're going back. I don't think we're going back before spring break. I really don't. And I'm sorry for listeners that if I made you cry, but I'm being future focused. I'm being proactive. And I'm telling you, I don't think we're going back. So it is insane. And then I feel for like you said, the teachers, right? This is so much on them. And it's
Absolutely.
not like these teachers were like, you know what I really want to do is teach online school. Like none of these teachers signed up for this. And our staff is, I've just been blown away by the North Shore School District, truly. And Dr. Reed, I applaud you for being the first to acknowledge that this was the smart thing to do. I know people disagree with that, but I think she's a genius and made a great decision. But the amount of stuff online that people are saying, they're so angry and they're like attacking the staff. And it's like, hey, these people, this is what it is. This decision was made. And these people are going out of their way to try and make this work as smoothly as it can for your family.
Sure.
It just breaks my heart. And then we've got all these families, especially at our school, where, the kids only eat at school. We've got just such a huge, like diverse population in terms of socioeconomics. And so the district has also figured out how to deliver meals to families. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So like, I just really commend our district for what they've done. And my heart bleeds for the staff that are working so hard and then having to see all this stuff online that implies that they're not doing a very good job when really like we're all just trying to do the best we can.
For sure.
Grace, everyone, just a little.
Yeah, grace. And it's literally this like day by day situation. I mean, you and I have even talked about that, Kira. Like it's just, okay, well, for today, this is what this is. And then you have to kind of go from there. So talk to me about that, because you actually just mentioned before we started recording some things even you and your husband are doing to help this work well. And like what we know it's just a kerfluffle, but what are you doing to maintain some semblance of future-focused parenting, some semblance of parental unity? What are the things that you've already had to put in place or that you imagine you might put in place to help this be, well, let's be honest, it's still going to be a huge impact, but maybe less of a monstrous impact?
It's super reminiscent of when my kids were born, I think, in that the idea that one person shouldn't be shouldering this load, that we need a lot of communication, and that also we're just really stretched thin and have to be kind of extra forgiving of each other. So my husband, bless Dave, I mean, our listeners, if you've listened to the Dad podcast, you've met my husband. He was the one who said, our weekly one-to-one, our like weekly meeting that we have, he was like, I think we should move it to daily for a little while. What do you think? And I was like, yes. So every single night after the kids go to bed, we sit down and go, how'd it go today? What went well? What went terribly? What does tomorrow look like? What does your day look like? And also, I wouldn't say that this conversation went quite as nicely or smoothly, but I was like, I hope the expectation isn't that I'm going to be doing everything, because I can't. I run a business and I have work. And just because I am the school's main point of contact does not mean that I can handle this all by myself. And he is the type of husband and partner that was like, of course not. So, looking at where are the breaks in his day where I can get my work done, where you and I, Deana, can record. So that kind of daily one-to-one has been huge. And just that check-in of like, how are you? I like made him lunch today because I was making myself some lunch, and I like took him a bowl of, it was macaroni and cheese because like we're running out of food. I mean, it's like,
hey,
it's bananas.
It's comfort food. You need comfort.
I did. I was like, what I really, really need is some macaroni and cheese right now. Because here's the other thing, hot tip. So we are total doomsdayers at my house. My dad and I are like, we're the people that, we have the 4 disaster kits, a map to the border in the disaster kit. We're those people. And we thought we were really prepared. And in many ways we were. Like we already had N95 masks.
Yeah.
Like we had all these things. But when you think about like, can we survive on food for 2 weeks? There's a big difference between like surviving on food and like actually having food you want to eat. So it's amazing how fast you run out of like fresh fruit and vegetables and stuff like
Sure.
that. So we're like having a lot of food delivered, but then again, to protect my dad, we go to these crazy extremes and we like Lysol down all the food when it comes in the door. I mean, it's just, anyway. So Dave and I have been doing a really good job, I think, of powwowing. And I think it's that, we over the years of parenting have really latched onto that survival mode concept of like, sometimes you just got to whack survival mode onto your life. And it means forgiving yourself these things. So yes, the kids are watching a little more TV than they usually are. They're also cooped up in the house. So like, we're trying to be sensitive to the fact that they're in a really unusual situation. I'm trying really, really hard to keep telling them when my frustration is about the situation and not them, that you see me getting really frustrated. I'm not mad at you. I'm frustrated with the situation. But yeah, those have been the main things, is a lot of forgiveness of each other, of ourselves, and a real kind of like hunkering down around communication, because it's just so important right now. We don't know how long this is going to go on for, and we have to just kind of do the best we can in a pretty ridiculous situation. How about you guys?
Well, some similarities and of course some differences. I don't have 8-year-olds and I don't have two of them. So that's something. I actually don't have my son yet at all because he's with his dad today. So we also have this unique thing where like I get to gear up for it. I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready for a cranky teenager starting tomorrow. So in that way, I think it will look different. He needs a lot. He'll need a lot less. So I think the future focused parenting piece for me is he will need probably less in terms of micro level management of his schoolwork, but he really needs a lot of macro because
Yeah.
especially with it not being screen based, for him to just want to sit and crack a book for hours, yeah, it's a tall order. so
Right.
so there's going to have to be some definite oversight, and I'm not always present because I'll still be going to my part-time job and like just things like that. So I think the future focus piece for me will be a lot of communication with Mark
Yeah.
and making sure I'm checking in with him, asking what he needs from me, but also just general reminders to help him stay on task without having that cross over into pressure, because he interprets that as pressure really easily. So I think I'm going to have to watch my communication and all of that really closely in these next couple weeks so that things don't fall off or get pushed to the back burner, but that it's not creating tension between he and I, because that would only add to the stress of the situation. And I think the other thing is just helping with logistics wherever I can. One of the ways that I'm future focused in a different way with a teen is that I try to ask, what do you need from me? And then try my best, note the word try, to stay
Yeah.
hands off of the rest. But there are some really unique things for him right now with he has had some auditions that have gotten postponed or have different requirements. And so
Right.
working with his agent, I'm trying to let him do as much of that as he can, but to be able to be real, like, hey, mom, I need help with this part. Or I now have these digital sides. Can we print them while I'm with you? Or do I need to do that while I'm with dad? I mean, just interesting things like that. The other thing that he's never done, he does a lot of FaceTime, and I think most teens do, but he hasn't really done a lot of group online calls. Actually, I'm not sure if he ever has, and that is how they are going to have to rehearse for the drama he is in now. Because
No,
yes,
seriously? Oh
yes,
my
because
gosh.
all the
That's crazy.
extracurriculars are canceled. So the
Right.
director said, get whatever props you have at home. I still want you moving on the video call
Oh my
because I
God.
want you to build the muscle memory of your blocking. So, helping with setting those kinds of things up for him, but then staying out of his way while he rehearses. And, I think there's going to be some interesting parenting challenges for me to try to like walk that line of let me help you, but let me let you own what you can in this weirdness. And then very similar in terms of the parental unity piece. Scott and I have had a lot more touch bases, and he's also been a big instrumental help to me. Kira knows, and I've probably outed myself on the show before that I'm just like a tech no. It's just a no from
I'm
me,
a
okay?
techno.
Yeah. I'm
No.
just not, it doesn't mean I can't learn, and I actually am so grateful for this podcast and the opportunity at Future Focus Parenting because I have learned so much. But in general, I am not very technologically inclined. So things like setting up a new podcasting platform to do it remotely. He's been such a blessing to me, helping me. Got this like Bluetooth wireless headset, although Kira knows because I was scolding him earlier. I'm not interested in being seen with this thing on my head. And he was like walking by and taking pictures. It was like the worst.
Oh,
So,
Scott.
but he is a helper. So that's been good. But we've had to have a lot more, hey, what's your day like? What's your day like? And
Yeah.
he's also seeing impact in his business because of being in high tech sales. He said that it's so interesting, rather than people wanting to buy service agreements or products, he's having them, hey, can you help us integrate in case we all have to work from home? So it's just
Wow.
so interesting. So I've
Interesting.
had to try to be really patient with him. He's on different calls than he would normally be. So he might have times where he needs me to be quiet. And then now that I'm podcasting from home, there's times where I need a quiet house. And literally today he left so that I could do this. So I feel really grateful that we're kind of working to not step on each other's toes, but respect each other's different spheres of influence. And
Yeah.
so I'm really grateful for that. But it is going to
Yeah.
be, yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple weeks. And his CEO has also said, now all travel has to be approved through me. So Scott travels quite a bit for work. I don't know if I've said that on the show before, but I imagine that will scale back some. He still has travel planned through March, basically, that has been
Wow.
approved, but it's going to be interesting just watching the weeks unfold, or if any of that changes. And I don't know. I find, I honestly, I feel like the biggest thing right now is I'm like that emoji with the shrugging of the shoulders. Like, I don't know. Like we're supposed to go out of the country in May, and I'm like, I don't know if we're going. Like we just,
No, us
it's like,
too. I was thinking about that. Us too. Can we talk for a second? Because, it's been a while since you and I disagreed on the show.
yeah.
And I wouldn't say that we disagree at all right now, but we are kind of responding to this really
Oh
differently.
yeah, I think our
Um,
approaches are very different.
Very different. And I think that's kind of cool because that's one of the things we kind of pride ourselves on the
Yeah.
show, is that people can listen and they can oftentimes get like both sides
Yes.
of the opinion. So tell everyone a little bit about how you're coming at
Yeah.
this.
So interesting. And I'm thankful that you wanted to bring this up because I want our listeners to hear. Well, I know you've already outed yourself as like the doomsdayer, right? You're like, I'm going to take every precaution imaginable. And to be fair, you have someone literally in your home that's in that higher risk group. So to me, that
Yeah.
really makes sense. So this comes down to wanting, and we do want this for you as FFPs and as our listeners, to get to hear when Kira and I approach things differently, but still really respect the other person's choice. And I want to say up front, I really respect Kira's choice and understand why she's making it. And I also want to say though that I'm handling it very differently, and there's a couple of reasons for that. So I'm kind of approaching this situation as I'm going to just live my life until I'm told that I can't for some reason. So if there were actual, let's say, like martial law was enacted, or we had a quarantine, something like what's happening in Italy, then of course I would abide by that. I'm a law abiding citizen. But for me, right now, I'm going about my life and keeping things as normal as I can within reason. And here's why. I don't have Kira's situation. I don't have an older person with any kind of underlying health issues in my home. Scott and I and our teen son, who's with us most of the time, are all in what would be pretty much considered a lower risk category for coronavirus. So that's one element of it. I think another one is I am, by nature and by diagnosis, an anxious person. So because of having OCD and some anxiety issues, for me, I'm not the kind of person where panicking and hunkering down is helpful to me. It actually would escalate me and ramp me up in a way that isn't good for me mentally and emotionally. So for me, it's actually better to conduct myself as normally as I can to keep my own anxiety level really manageable, and so that I don't kind of run away with things. There was this meme going around the internet a while ago, and I was like, that's me. And it was this girl with a cape on, and it said, anxiety girl, able to leap to the worst conclusion in a single bound. And I was like, yep, that's me. So if I were to immediately like stockpile all my groceries and huddle in and self quarantine, I'd probably actually be panicking more, which is really interesting because I think that's maybe not as common. I think I might be maybe an anomaly there, but that's one element. And then admittedly, and I actually said this in the car to Kira when we were headed down to the news station last week, I do think some of my perspective and ability to maybe not quite go into this dark place is because of my faith paradigm. And I do think there is something really interesting about believing, okay, well, I believe that God already has my life planned out and knows how long I'm going to live. And what is decided, and I can kind of rest in that. And so I don't feel as panicky, I think, as I might if I weren't a Christian. And I don't know how much that plays in, but I think it's an element. And that's why I shared it with her when we were driving, because I think it's a feature for me is there's this different kind of peace because I'm not the boss of what's going to happen anyway. So I don't feel as compelled to try to put all this scaffolding around it. So
Okay, I have a question.
of course.
Unsurprisingly, I have a question. So with the faith piece, because what
Mhm.
fascinates me about that aspect of the faith stuff is that if it's all planned out, then I guess I'm thinking like we have a communal responsibility too,
Mhm.
right? So at the end of the day, anybody who leaves their house is risking infecting someone who's going to then go hang out with someone who's going to go hang out with someone older who's going to die. Like that's the risk. I know that sounds really extreme, but that's the risk, right?
Mhm.
So if the thought is like that's already planned out, God already knows that person's going to die, then why are we then void of a community responsibility? Like, do we have any responsibility to each other?
Oh, I love that you asked this because I do think this is sort of this age-old question about if you believe in a sovereign God, how do you not just go to apathy? Like, what does it matter, right?
Right.
And I think it's actually there is a very clear for me, like a very clear sense of the mandate for we also have this element of like loving each other, caring for each other, being kind to each other, and and looking at kind of this combination of data and the human element. And so for me, even though at the very bottom, I guess if you were like building a house, the very bottom for me, like the foundation is, it's ultimately not up to me, but the house that I'm building on that foundation is I still have a job to do, which means I don't be an idiot and not wash my hands or, I don't unnecessarily go into a crowd. And I think that's the thing is that like underneath there's a different maybe calmness, but on top of that is what you still do as a practical member of a community. And I think maybe even in some ways, I feel extra strong about that as a Christian because I have a responsibility to other people. I'm not interested in being selfish and having it be all about me. And I want to be honoring and respectful of the world that I'm in and the world that God's placed me in. So for me, it is unquestioningly that I'm actually on the same page with the community element. And it's more just that underneath, I'm not going to this like ultimate fear that I think I would tend toward as an anxious person.
Sure. It's like God's got you.
Yes.
Kind of how you feel. Or God's not got you, but then that's what God had planned for you.
Yeah. Or like if I'm supposed to get it, I'm going to get it, but it doesn't mean I'm going to not try to be careful. I mean, I think that's prudence, right? If we were talking about that as a value.
I guess that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like if you're going to get it because that's God's plan for you, then you're going to get it. Then why bother washing your hands? Because like you aren't in control. So why make any choices that suggest that you are?
That's an interesting question. I don't really struggle with that dichotomy the way I think somebody who's outside of it does, because I definitely still feel a responsibility. And I also feel that there's just a wisdom piece. I don't know. Prudence is the word that I'm thinking of, maybe because we recently talked about that with values. But I think being cavalier is also really flying in the face of respect for other people and respect for God. Like I don't I don't take that part lightly, like just going, who cares? Life is so precious. And I think I feel that extra in so many arenas, like as a believer, that I think it's so irresponsible to just be cavalier with it. So it doesn't butt up against that for me, but the question really makes sense to me, and I can see the question, and I'm not being articulate at all, but I'm just
no, it's okay.
I'm
didn't
just
know
saying,
I was going to ask you that.
no, but it's a lot of it's actually pretty muddy in some sense for me because a lot of this mixes together. I'm an anxious person, so I would never not wash my hands. even if I believe in a God that's like, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Like I can't go there. And that's maybe partly just to do with my personality. So I'm not really making like a theological argument or a data-based argument. I'm saying for me, I'm answering honestly that my approach is different than yours, but I think some of it is wiring, some of it is belief, and that those things intersect almost like a Venn diagram. So while I can take a lot of comfort in knowing that my future is secure and that outcome ultimately I don't have control over, I would never, for the way I am as a person, not still be careful, take precautions, be wise, be considerate of others.
It's really interesting. Like I can imagine that faith piece is so comforting. And we've talked about this before, like at any hard time to feel like something has your back. Like we all want to feel that. I mean, I completely understand how that can be really helpful in a situation like this. So I'm really glad you have that. I wish I did.
I really wish you had a co-host who was like super smart with all the doctrine and and could probably explain it in such a more beautiful way than me, because you are really asking this kind of deep centuries old question of
You're welcome.
how do you not go to apathy? No, I'm serious. I mean, it's a question people wrestle with even now. And what I'm giving you is a very unsatisfactory answer, which is part of why I can't go to apathy is I'm too scared. So I think I just want to out that and just say I'm so sorry that is not sufficient, and I recognize that it's not a scholarly answer. It's just the truth. It's the truth for me.
Sure. No, that makes perfect. It's so funny. So essentially, okay, here's what's fascinating about what you just said. So if essentially like all of this for you is mildly rooted in fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet I'm the one sort of behaving like the fear-based individual.
Oh, that's
right?
awesome. What an incisive observation, Kira.
Oh my goodness. That's why it's bananas. Seriously, this is bananas. My friend Kelly gave me that word. I cannot claim it, but it is my new favorite word because there is no other way to describe what's happening right now.
Oh, my sister uses it all the time. So Siobhan, shout out to you, because I do think this is perfect for bananas. I mean, it's upside down. But I think here's what it comes back to, which is why I'm glad you asked the question about like our different approaches, is that everyone is going to respond to a crisis differently.
Yeah.
And there has to be a lot of room, and we have to give people a wide berth for, you know what, you might want to stay in your house. You might want to go out and about. You might be really careful with hand washing. For you, it might be this other thing. I mean, I think we're all going to, and it's on a continuum. It's not even two ends of the spectrum. We happen to represent kind of, I think, two more diverse sides, but there's a lot in the middle too, right? Like people who are like, I'm not staying in my home, but I'm canceling this, that, and the other thing, and just really limiting certain things. I mean, there's just so many different responses. And I think in a time where our country and our world is kind of all united around a like, okay, here's this big thing. What do we do with it? The best gift we can offer each other is kindness about those different choices. I think one of the things that's been frustrating for me is watching people fight about the response when really let's be united against the actual problem. Let's attack the problem, not each other.
Well,
and
thank you for saying that, because this is exactly what I'm feeling. And I kind of touched on it when I talked about the school district and like the way people are throwing all the shade at the staff. And it's like, guys, this is a time of coming together. And I love what you said. This is not a right or wrong. This is everyone's got their own story. And you move through the world, and someone who doesn't maybe know that you have anxiety might not understand why you're choosing to live your life normally. Someone who doesn't know that I have a vulnerable person in my home might not understand why I'm acting like a crazy person. So can we just stop judging each other and go, hey, I'm glad you're doing what you need to do to feel okay right now. How can I support you? Like, this is so simple. Instead of trashing each other and putting everybody down and putting out all this, research says this and research, shut up. Everybody just shut up. I want to drop an F-bomb so badly right now.
You are showing admirable self-restraint, Kira.
I am, but just everybody cool it and let's come together, because whether you think this is no big deal, there are people out there that think it's a very big deal. So can we show them kindness? And if you think this is a very big deal and there are people that aren't acting like it's a big deal, can we show them some kindness too? Like, can everyone just be kind? Is this so hard? Really?
Yes, let's be kind.
So that's all I got to say today.
Well, I don't know. if this was helpful to any of you. But
I feel better having just had a chance to talk
but
about
here's
it.
what I do hope you got, FFPs. I hope you got some real, because Kira and I often come to you probably, I think, hopefully sounding somewhat articulate and polished, and here we are,
Not
like, we're
today.
both just like, whoa, what is going on? And so we really strive to be real with you as our listeners, and that was an important piece of today. So you got the real, and hopefully you did get some examples of what you could be doing with your parenting partner if you have one. What do you maybe even just need to do with your own sanity? But also, I think this overarching message of how can you be kind to your community and be respectful of how people are handling this, because it's going to look different for everyone. So maybe somewhere in there was something helpful. That's our hope. And we are really committed to continuing to bring you content through this issue. So please still watch for episodes from us each week. And we just are so glad that you're still tuning in. And maybe you have extra time to tune in. Who knows? You might also be stuck at home and able to listen to podcasts at times you normally couldn't.
Yes, this is a great time to subscribe and binge.
Yeah, that's
listen.
right. Binge away. Raising Adults Fest 2020.
And we have such a cool guest next week because we
yes.
actually had already recorded this interview and it's up and ready to go. So next Monday, Deana, you have to tell everyone about our guest next Monday.
Yes,
she's so great.
Too excited for this. Okay, so next week we have a professor of anthropology from Northwestern, and her name is Shalini Shankar, and she has done fascinating cutting edge research on Generation Z, which is about 1996-ish babies all the way up through about 2012. She'll get more clear on the dates when we talk to her. But why I'm excited for you guys to listen to this is many of you are parenting Gen Zers. And even if you're not, she does an incredible job of breaking down what it's like to parent into the next generation. Because ultimately, all of us are parenting kids whose world looks different than ours did. And so it's really helpful. But I do also have just like a fun nerd out connection with her because she wrote a book about the National Spelling Bee. And everyone knows I'm a word nerd. So you'll get to hear us chat just briefly about that. But she's amazing.
And she's going to do a book giveaway too, right?
Yes, she is.
Announce next week.
Yes, we'll announce that next week. As part of our Tuesday tip series. So be watching for that. And she's actually going to give away an autographed copy of her book. So that's really special. So we're looking forward to having Shalini with us. And that will air on the 23rd.
Right. So if you haven't followed us on Facebook and you're interested in entering the book giveaway, you're going to want to follow us on Facebook or Instagram because that's where we're going to run the giveaway. And that is at Future Focused Parenting. Don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, please do. And remember, we love your reviews. So new reviews get put up on social media. So do leave us a new review if you haven't left one before. I think we should stop now.
I do too. That was long, unintendedly so. Raising Adults is produced by Kira Dorian and Deana Thayer and brought to you today partly in the laundry room and partly in Deana's bonus room. Music by Seattle band Hannah Lee. Thanks for listening.